All right, it looks like we're live. It is Wednesday afternoon here in Atlanta, Georgia. Actually, it's nicely sunny, right around 90, but it's nice. So I love doing a few good minutes when the weather is nice. I don't know, it's just I don't know, mental thing or something. But I also like doing a few good minutes when I have some really good conversation ahead of me. That means usually the equation for that is really good topics and a really good guest. And I can check off both of those. I know we're going to have a really good topic. And I know we're going to have a really good guest because this is somebody that I've known for the last several years, actually. Wow. That's amazing. And known mostly from doing the Gillmor Gang. And we are gangsters, for lack of a better way of putting it. And also, he spoke at our conference we did earlier this year, the IRL 25 conference. He is also just really well known. He's been involved with the tech space for decades as an investor, as a technologist, as an investor, as an advisor. Now he's currently CEO of SignalRank, and I consider him a friend. Keith Teare, thanks for joining me, man.
You're very welcome. I also consider you a friend, Brent, despite our often disagreements.
Yeah, if you really want to get into some disagreeable stuff between all four of us, actually, check out the Gillmor Gang. When we know when it's coming on, we'll let you know when it's coming on. I also forgot you're a podcaster. And you do a weekly. Is it a weekly newsletter?
Yeah, that was the week. The clue is in the title.
Yes, that was the week. Yes, and the show is the same name. That's what, Fridays.
We have our own Steve Gillmor called Andrew Keene, so it depends on his schedule.
Everybody should have at least one Gillmor, I would think. And luckily, on the Gillmor Gang, we actually get two. But I digress. So the reason why I asked Keith to come on today and do a few good minutes is our last Gillmor Gang, which I don't know, over a week ago or something like that. We started talking a little bit more. Well, we always talk about AI and politics, and then how AI is impacting politics and how politics is impacting AI. It's kind of a circular thing. But one of the things, I've been hearing a lot about, and I don't know, it's not like just me or anything, but people are in some instances afraid of AI because they're afraid it's going to take their job. And then, like, on the other hand, there are people that are really excited about AR and the potential it has to impact their job, or in some instances, impact their small business and allow them to do more with less. As a matter of fact, one of those kind of stories is maybe a little bit bigger a story because Palantir, when they came out with their earnings report a couple of weeks ago, first of all, they blew it up. I mean, they really had blowout earnings, and their CEO was on, I think, on the earnings call, and one of the things he said is, one of our objectives is to 10x our revenue over the next couple of years, 5 years, I think, while reducing the headcount from 4,100 to 3,600. And when you're able to exponentially grow like that, and while decreasing the headcount, yeah, that's going to be a cause for, I don't know, concern and discussion and all those things. So we were on our call a week and a half ago. Well, not a call, it's a show, Gillmor Gang. And we got on a little bit into that discussion. And that's when Keith started talking about how the way that you've been able to use some of these services has allowed your company, SignalRank, or allow you to not have to hire additional folks this past year. And you personally are using these things to, vibe code, to do all sorts of tech skills that you would typically take you the better part of the week. And you're saying with these things in place now, you're able to do all the things that you need to do more like in a day, which allows you to do other things that are important, like I would assume raising some investment funds. So tell us a little bit first about your background and a little bit about SignalRank, and then we'll dig into some other stuff.
Well, I'm a little bit lucky because I started my life in tech on a Tandy TRS-80 in the early days of the spreadsheet. And my approach to tech was always about structuring data, especially numbers, and being able to automate calculations. That's going way back to the early 1980s, and that evolved into me starting the UK's one of the first companies in the UK focused on databases, multi-user databases, in the era of DBase, when databases were still single user. Multi-user database,
the flat file database era, right?
a flat file era. And I was a very early adopter of Oracle and built systems for people like Warner Brothers Music, Mobile Oil, and so on. So I was a kind of an outsourced database and networking company in the 80s. And I was doing coding and building networks with my brother, actually. So I should also say I'm a sociologist by background. So I didn't study computer science. I learned to code myself in that era, and mainly database, what was then called 4GLs. So I kind of grew up with data and structure and queries and outcomes as the core benefits of computing. And roll the clock forward, sure enough, you get to this era, the era of CRMs and associated software, which is really just the latest incarnation of what I did then. The cloud, in a way, is just a small iteration on what was happening in the 80s. It's not very transformational in terms of what you do and what the benefits are, but it's a different way of doing it. But it feels native to me. I kind of understand it. AI comes along and throws everything up in the air. I mean, firstly, because AI is really not very good at structured data. It's really, really good at unstructured data and learning and being trained on it. And it really doesn't have access to structured data for the most part, because it doesn't live on database queries. So that threw everything up in the air. And I live in a structured data world. SignalRank is a massive database of every single company ever funded in venture capital ever. And it's very granular. So if you pick a company, I'll have a record for every funding round at the investor level. So if there's 10 investors in a round, I'll have 10 rows in my database for that round. So it's very granular, very detailed. And we do it like that to be able to ask very specific questions, like how good is Mark Benioff as an investor at the seed stage? And is he better at the A round stage? How about the B round stage? So it's very, very granular in terms of knowing, being able to ask questions. And AI is useless for that because it's just really bad at understanding schemas, database structures, the meaning at the field level of what the meaning of the field is, to be able to, for example, we have a field UUID, which is the identifier for an investor. And we have a field INVUUID, which you would think has something to do with investor, but it's actually a unique identifier for a specific funding round investor pairing. And there's no way AI would know what those fields did. It could read the names if we allowed it, but it wouldn't know what they did. So it wouldn't be able to answer a human question without knowing what each field did, and then be able to form queries. So most of my work now is fixing that. Is how do you make AI as good as a human at producing results from databases for human questions? And SignalRank is at the leading edge of that, because we're a predictive investment platform. We predict whether a company is going to do well at the B round, and we invest in it if the answer is yes. So money rides on the answer. Wow. And so you can't have probabilistic AIs making that decision. You need deterministic queries because money's riding on it. And so it's a big deal. And I've in the last 2 years really, but really in detail the last 18 months, started to use all of the vibe coding tools like Cursor, up until recently Cursor with Claude, as an AI, writing code against databases to solve human problems, and then to automate notifications in real time to my team. Oh, here's a B round that qualifies for our money. Who do we know there? So we're really automating investing from database queries.
One of the things that's interesting that you just said is because of money being, and I'm assuming it's pretty significant amounts of money being on the line from a platform like SignalRank, that you have to really depend on the information you're getting so that you can make these informed decisions. But yet you're also using some of these services to do some things. How do you determine which parts of your platform and which parts of the job that people have to do in order for your platform to work? What part do you use AI to do?
Yeah.
And you feel comfortable with, given the things that you're working with and how important accuracy really is?
Yeah. Actually, we there's only one place we do not use AI. We use AI everywhere except for one place. And the one place is ingesting our original data, which we do daily, and running machine learning models against it. That is all done by a data science lead. That data gets normalized in AWS and sent to Snowflake.
Mm.
And from receiving the data in Snowflake all the way through to investment decisions is AI based. AI writes SQL code, a lot of SQL code. I'm the co-pilot in a way. I'm guiding it. And by the way, I'm the CEO and I'm doing 100% of the coding from that point onwards.
Wow.
And 100% of the coding I do is done with AI.
So before you go forward with that, 100% of the coding you do is done with AI now. How has that impacted the amount of work and the time it takes you to do that kind of thing using the AI as part of it?
Well, if I tell you we're in version 4 of our platform, version 1 realistically actually took about 10 years to figure everything out. But the actual coding to launch it from understanding what we wanted to do to doing it was probably 6 months. Version 2 was probably 3 months. Version 3 was a month. And version 4, which we recently launched, you can go to our Substack, which is called SignalRank Update, and read about it. Took 2 days.
So 6 months to 2 days as you continue using AI and putting out the next phase of your platform.
Yeah. Now, a lot of that gain is knowledge-based, that we kind of understand what we're doing more now. But you do rewrite the code 100%. You don't edit the old code. So it's still a lot of code. It's something like 1,000 SQL queries and views. So to be able to do that many in 2 days, and then we push it all through Snowflake to a front end on Metabase that produces charts and graphs, and that produces our website at signalrank.ai, which is also AI coded and has embedded charts and tables and stuff in.
All right, hold off again. Now, how many employees do you currently have?
4.
All right. And when you were working on that first version of the platform, the one that, well, you said that there's a lot of thought and stuff, 10 years, but really the effort was about 6 months. Yeah. How many people were involved in the first, part of, or the first version of your platform?
On the engineering side, we were totally 8 people then.
Okay.
So we've shrunk by half. And the coding team was 3, and it's now really 0 because we have data science, which I guess you could call coding, but it's not it's not the front end. But the front end, the back end, and the middleware is 100% me, and I'm not even employed as a coder.
Well, yeah, you're the CEO. You got other things I'm sure is on your mind. But I mean, that kind of I guess on a smaller stage, what the Palantir folks are talking about, the 10x revenue growth while decreasing the amount of employees. I mean, you're almost a microcosm of that, because you're able to you're doing way more with fewer, I guess, human resources, it sounds like.
Yeah. It wouldn't occur to me right now and I've done a lot of startups in my career, and usually I have an engineering team that is 4 groups: a DevOps team, a back-end team, a middleware team, and a front-end team. And if you're doing mobile, you might have a mobile team separate from the front-end team. So, that's anywhere from probably a minimum of 5 to an average of 10 employees that now, honestly, reduced down to 0, as long as you have someone who can articulate what it is you're trying to build.
And that's where you come in.
Yeah.
So when we were on the Gillmor Gang, you were mentioning that you spend about $1,000 a month on these platforms, these AI platforms and services. So Cursor, I think you mentioned you use Perplexity, I think is one of them that you use.
Yeah.
You use, was Anthropic, right, for some of the things?
Claude, really.
Claude,
Anthropic owns it, but it's Claude.
Right.
Code. I've recently migrated to Claude Code.
From Cursor?
Running inside of Cursor.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay.
Which is a nice combination. And the last week GPT-5 came out, and honestly, it's so good. I'm thinking about using it. I need to play with it a bit more yet, but it looks really good.
So let's talk about the impact it's had specifically on you. I kind of outlined it, but give us a little detail of how it's changed the way that you're running this. You said you've done startups before. So how are these tools making SignalRank the way you kind of address running SignalRank versus what you were doing before all this stuff was out?
Well, now I let my team rely on me for iterative change in everything, really. And the pressure on me is not very much, because it's so fast and quick to change things. Like, we needed to send our investors a statement of their account last week, and I added that module to our backend CRM in about 30 minutes. Wow. And it spat out PDFs for every investor with accurate information about their status. So we run a CRM that's 100% internally coded, so there's no bloat in it. It just does what we need to get done. And if it doesn't, you can add it super fast. So the gap between idea and execution is reduced down to minutes, not months. And as a CEO over many decades, as you pointed out, probably the biggest friction has been the relationship between vision, product, and engineering in any company. Because vision it's like the Chinese whispers. Vision very rarely gets executed in alignment with the vision. It goes through various layers, and then something is spat out, and then you iterate. Well, now the pure vision can be immediately coded, and I know if it's what is in my head or not. So it really empowers the entrepreneur to execute as long as you learn the tools. It took me a while, by the way. These tools were very unfamiliar to me at first. I think I probably had at least 3 months of relative failure trying to make the things work the way I wanted before I was, riding in the saddle.
And you also mentioned the way that this is all kind of evolving. It that $1,000 a month that you use is like extremely well spent, because the value you get, and I guess the estimate I think you mentioned is be about what, 30,000, because you would have to hire people and provide them all the things that human employees need in order to get the job done. Whereas now these tools are allowing you to relay this kind of information in a way that allows you to kind of stay away and still feel even better about the idea that's coming from you being executed because of the way that you're able to hand it off now.
Exactly. I mean, think of the impact on a P&L. I think SignalRank's gross margins are well above 90%.
Wow.
And even for a software company, that's fantastic. And we're not a software company, we're an investment company that uses software. So most of our costs are payouts to third parties that we co-invest with. I don't need to get into that. That's deeper in our business model. So most of those costs are not platform or software related. Our software related and platform costs are probably 1%.
How far along would you be with SignalRank if these tools hadn't been available at the time they were? Like, you're this far away now, or this far along now, because you have these tools in place. But what if these tools weren't there? Where do you think you would be with SignalRank?
Well, so SignalRank's measured against back-tested performance of an algorithm. So the key thing we need is the back-tested performance of an algorithm to deliver profits to investors. And our target is 5x their money in 5 years.
Wow. Okay.
And obviously in venture capital, that everyone knows that's achievable if you make good decisions. So it's all about the algorithm's ability to make good decisions. And before AI, it was a hand-coded heuristic, which delivered 4 point something in 5 years as an average outcome. And I don't think it would have been that easy to get above that. You would have to experiment with hundreds of different weightings in the algorithm to see which performed and which didn't. As soon as we could do machine learning, initially it underperformed the heuristic. So it's a XG boost based machine learning model for those who are technical. Now, after using AI from version 2 onwards, the model now backtests at 6.4x in 5 years. So that's a huge improvement. And it only took us days to upgrade from version 3 to version 4. But the key is the performance. The performance now includes the machine learning, which is now our best model. It used to be worse, now it's best. And so when we deploy capital into companies, our confidence level in the likely outcome is off the charts. So the qualitative impact is by far the biggest. The cost reductions are not unimportant because investors care about expenses in a fund. And so we're going to be able to reduce our fund expenses down to probably 50 basis points, whereas in venture capital, it's normally 2%. Because everything's automated. So you can't really underestimate replacing humans with algorithm and software is as long as you maintain quality, that's the key. Extremely beneficial to everyone.
And so kind of leapfrogging off of that, because of the efficiencies that it allows you as a CEO to have in taking that idea and moving it into a position in which people, a smaller and smaller group of people, are able to execute it and get it done quickly. How does that impact the way that you go about you're looking for your funding and moving SignalRank, giving it enough money to get to the next level?
Well, that's where your original dilemma impacts us, which is, I think most people who are investors, they hear our pitch, their first reaction is, this is too good to be true. Because 6 times your money in 5 years is unheard of in almost any asset class, especially in venture capital, which is highly illiquid, even when you do get gains. So it seems too good to be true. So our biggest struggle actually is making what is true appear reasonable to disbelievers. And most investors are by nature risk averse.
Right.
And so we've de-risked private market investing. But to a risk averse investor, that's almost an impossibility. They don't believe in de-risking. So most of our discussions with investors are tipping point discussions, which is, are you ready to do this in a new way? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. So our investor base are early believers in something that is probably inevitable, but they don't think so yet.
Wow. So we're coming into the third quarter of 2025. There's a lot of, there's just so much chatter and so much discussion about where AI is in terms of like since the I call it the chat GPT era began not even 3 years ago. You can't get away from the discussion. I don't know if you want to, but even if you did want to, you couldn't. Some people believe it's changed them already. Some are waiting to see if it's actually going to impact at the ROI level. Even in the enterprise, there's a lot of that discussion going on. But you've already, I mean, just kind of walking through what you've done, you've already kind of proved the case, at least for you and what you guys are doing, and maybe a category of companies that are able to do this, like a really tech savvy, that have the ability to take that idea and turn it into executed plans and strategies and all that kind of stuff. But when do you, and also I'll take another step. You're a small business. You're not like a big, thousands of employees and things like that. So you kind of sit in a number of categories when it comes to this, because a lot of traditional small businesses, they don't have your background to take the different platforms that you've identified and started using, and to quickly, relatively speaking, turn it into positive stuff that your SignalRank is able to turn out.
Yeah.
When does that happen for regular? I mean, does that happen for like the non-Keith Teare type led businesses? Because it seems like that's, the Palantir example of being able to grow 10x, and I think it was like 5 years, and bring down a number of employees. There's a certain skill set that you need to have in order to really have a shot at that.
Yeah.
What are people that are not like you, that they don't have a lot of additional resources, but you have proven that you're able to do a lot with this stuff that keeps you from having to spend a lot?
Yeah. I think my experience is probably most relevant to startups with technical team members. I think there's a whole bunch of companies focused on non-technical teams. Replit and Lovable are two of the most well-known, where they're trying to simplify the workflows to replicate what I did, but with non-technical users. But I think even there, I suspect that will get some traction, but it won't be the solution, because you still need someone with a very clear vision able to translate that into a technical roadmap. And that's hard. To take a real world vision and figure out a technical roadmap is hard. So I think what happened in SEO land might be a close approximation to what will happen here, which is there'll be a whole bunch of service organizations that do that on behalf of small businesses and offer their building services, if you will, to small businesses. And they'll mostly be local. Like I would guess in Atlanta, there's probably already 20 or 30 2 to 5 person service companies that will do your AI transformation for you. And they'll interview you. They'll want to understand your vision. they'll do the transformation of that vision into a technical roadmap, and they'll then execute it for you. And you'll probably pay them 20 to 30K, and then maybe $1,000 a month retainer to be your service agency. I think that's probably a realistic next stage, because it's scary. It was even scary for me. I hesitated to download Cursor and run it because it was very unfamiliar to me. Once I got familiar with it, my fears went away, but I don't think most people would go there.
All right. This is cool stuff. I wanted to have that kind of conversation so we could go a little deeper outside of the Gillmor Gang. But I want to kind of bring the Gillmor Gang conversation to what we're talking about here, because there's been, just in the past couple of days, there's been some really interesting stuff. Now, I posted, I kind of dabble a little bit in investing and stuff like that. So I was looking at, I think it was Seeking Alpha, and I had a little, list of stocks that I like to follow. And, most of them are tech stocks. That's what I know most. And so I was looking at some of the companies, the big names in my CRM6 kind of where I live, so to speak. And I had known like Adobe has had a tough time over the last couple of years. Actually, it seems like when that Figma deal blew up, it kind of set the at least the stock stuff in motion. But I was just looking at year to date. And so I saw where Adobe was down about 25% year to date. I was like, let me look at Salesforce, see where they're at. Salesforce is down 30%. And then I looked at HubSpot. I don't know why I looked at those three. Well, I had a hunch, but I wanted to see where HubSpot was. And it's incredible to me. I don't know why I hadn't looked at this before. HubSpot is down 40% this year, year to date. Excuse me. Yeah. And then I said, all right, well, let me look at some of the companies that are not, I don't think, as tied to the marketing side of the CRM CX stuff. They all have marketing stuff, but companies like Oracle and Microsoft and ServiceNow, they are not known for that stuff. They have such a wide the breadth. They have depth too, but the breadth of their offerings go way beyond the traditional CRM of sales, service, and marketing automation. So I just want to see, and they all have their kind of AI infrastructure components. Not so much ServiceNow, but Oracle and Microsoft, absolutely. But ServiceNow is not traditionally looked at as a CRM company. They're moving in that direction, but they're not there yet. So I looked at them. So ServiceNow is up 6% year to date. I think Microsoft is up, if I'm not mistaken, 24%. And Oracle is up 52% year to date. So I was like, wow, what makes those companies so different? Because they're all participating. But I think it is. There's an AI infrastructure play with Oracle. There's an AI hyperscaler play with Microsoft and Azure. And ServiceNow is known more as a workflow automation platform that has done a really good job of embedding AI into it. And they have a really strategic partnership with NVIDIA that they've had. They're like the first one of the industry that I follow that had that kind of partnership. And they also have some really good strategic partnerships in like the contact center and things like that. So they are not looked at as a AI marketing, AI driven company. So I just put it out there on my LinkedIn profile and said, "Oh, this is really interesting. Is it just because some of those the first three companies, the HubSpots and the Adobes and the Microsofts, they are like looked at as like full blown traditional kind of CRM, and marketing automation is a huge component of that, and the AI impact of marketing automation still seems, the messaging still seems a little squishy, and maybe that's the reason." And these other companies have, AI infrastructure as part of their overall business. And is that the reason? But anyway, I just threw it out there. I didn't think much of it. And then I looked today, I was like, my God, there's like 70, let's see, there's about 70,000 impressions, and there's like 27 comments, and people, and some long comments, people sharing why they think that is. So I just want to throw it out to you. You know, what do you think is driving one set of companies that are very well known in the industry, but mostly for the traditional aspects of CRM and marketing automation, maybe, and they have done terribly from a stock market perspective, while these other companies are pretty much killing it? What do you think?
So I think there's two separate questions. One is, why is the market treating these companies this way?
Yeah.
And the second is, what do I think? And they're not the same, for sure.
Okay.
I think the way the market is treating them is, the market really is a power law market, very similar to venture capital. In any given year, the gains in the S&P 500 are driven by a very small number of the companies. And so if you bought the S&P 500, you'd be up 9.7% this year. But if you bought, the 7 drivers,
The Magnificent Seven.
yeah, you'd be up, I don't know what the answer is, by the way, but it's above 20%. And so investors are getting savvier at understanding indexes within indexes, and discarding companies that bring the index down. And a lot of that is future guessing the impact of AI as a plus or a minus on the company. And I think, honestly, the market's fairly accurate at doing that in the big picture. I hate to say this for all my friends who are Salesforce owners or work there, but it wouldn't be a stock I'd be buying right now because of uncertainty. It could be that Mark will totally turn it around, because he can do that. So you might be foolish not to buy it. But the smart bet probably is on staying away until you know. Whereas Microsoft, I'd say even Google, which has some challenges, the future probably is bright in an AI world. ServiceNow as well, because they're doing automated customer support a lot that benefits from AI. But I actually think all of the front end software vendors are challenged by a much bigger question, and this is where my brain goes, which is, what does software look like in the future? Does software even have a face, as in a brand and a landing page and a set of processes that a human would even see? It feels to me as if the future of software is headless, and AI deals with all that for you. And sometimes it'll deal with it with software it can write. Other times it will use vendors and APIs. The trend will be away from vendors and APIs because they won't be necessary. As long as you have a database and you need something to happen, it can probably make it happen. And I think that's true of every front-end facing thing. I went to the doctor yesterday for my annual stress test, which is when they test your heart response to stress. And I got the report last night from the doctor, which was full of medical terms. And I dumped it into ChatGPT and said, please give me a layman's version of what this is saying. And it was fantastic.
Wow.
It was absolutely fantastic. So I think AI is going to become the intermediary between us and everything. And so software is going to be buried. Of course, there'll still be software, but it won't have an interface. It won't need one. And the same, by the way, is going to be true of hardware. Hardware is going to change. So imagine a 5-year-old girl that the parents give her a toy, maybe a doll if they're traditional, versus, say, an iPad. Well, today an iPad would be easily the best thing to interest the kid. Well, what about when the doll can answer questions and talk back to you? And You know, maybe that's more interesting. So, or the Tesla that drives itself to your home when you buy it and delivers itself and has Grok inside to explain how to use it. So it feels to me as if the meaning of these words is going to massively transform. And the vendors who rely on user interfaces from the last generation are going to have problems.
So that leads perfect segue, man. Perfect segue. So when you think of the interface of the internet age, you think of the browser. And more specifically, because it has such a lion's share of the market, you think of Chrome browser. And when you think of the modern AI era, you think of like the open AIs with ChatGPT. 5 just came out. And you also think of, and I use this, and I know you use this, you think of Perplexity. And they just recently announced it came out with their, what is it, the Comet browser? I think that's what it's called, Comet, something like that.
Yeah,
I don't.
Comet.
Do you have access to it? Because I'm on the waiting list. I don't.
I did, and it isn't really there yet. So I stopped using it. I'm using Dia, DIA, which is another variant that's a little bit closer. But actually, as of yesterday, I reverted back to Chrome and Safari because neither one is really quite there yet. ChatGPT and Claude with no browser and Perplexity, the app, are actually better than the browser versions right now.
So that brings me to the point, because the browser has been the interface of the internet since really its inception. And it feels like everybody's looking to ChatGPT, or well, I should say OpenAI or Perplexity or any of these others, to maybe possibly provide the interface of the future. And as you were saying, Comet came out. I haven't looked at it. You weren't impressed with it as it is today, but we know things can happen fast.
Well, I wasn't unimpressed. It's just only about 20% of what I want. And
okay.
And it's taking away some things I still use Google search every now and then, and it blocks it.
Ouch. So just yesterday, I think, Perplexity, apparently it was a whole bunch of articles that came out. Perplexity, I don't know if they did or they're thinking of, but anyway, it looks like they're maybe looking to buy the Chrome business from Google, and the reported offer was for $34.5 billion. So first of all, that's a huge amount just on its face, but when you look at the impact that the browser has had and kind of the foundational aspect of it on Google's business model, it's not enough. That's not even close to being enough. But what does it say about Perplexity making that kind of offer when people are trying to be put out the pasture the current interface of the internet, which is the browser, and more specifically for a lot of people, it's the Chrome browser? What does that say about the state of the interface if the company that's one of the poster children of the future or the current and future AI revolution, when they make this huge offer, like I said, huge offer to what's the current face of the current internet? Does that mean maybe the browser, for lack of a bit another way forward, maybe it'll be a browser and maybe not look the same as what we have, but it still might be that kind of communication channel that we'll still be using even when all these things are used by everybody?
So a couple of things there. I mean, firstly, if you ask what is Chrome's business model, Chrome's business model is advertising.
Right.
And if you look at the revenue that Google makes from advertising driven by Chrome's probably worth closer to 400 billion than 34 billion.
Yeah, I would say. Yes.
That said, if Google could sell the browser but not have the business model go with it. So
what about the customers too, like the billions of active users of the browser? That's got to be a big component of what, if I'm putting a value on the Chrome business, it's that maybe be more important than the actual technology.
Yeah. So one, am I agreeing with that? But secondly, interestingly, I think that the instinct to want to build a browser or buy Chrome, which is basically the same instinct. They're looking for a shortcut to an outcome. Do you remember that word hybrid that came up a lot in the history of tech? It's almost like we're at a hybrid stage where people think the past is going to survive into the future, and they're not really prepared to dump the past yet. So they want a hybrid that combines the past and the future. And plugging AI into a browser seems like the perfect hybrid. I think that is a wrong instinct. I think the browser gets replaced by not necessarily a chat interface, but an interactive interface. And I think results will include HTML and database tables and whatever, images, videos. And so there'll be a browser-like experience at the results level from an AI interface. However, it won't be a URL. It'll be bringing together lots of content from lots of different places into a single result set. And that doesn't require a browser. It just requires a multimodal chat interface, including voice, by the way, as an
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think that instinct for a browser is a throwback instinct. And I don't think ChatGPT is keen to build a browser, even though there's rumors that they might, and they may well do it as a kind of an afterthought, but it won't be their primary thought. Their primary thought is getting into iOS, just like Gemini is getting into Android, and replacing both the browser and search with a query interface that has results. And ongoing results, like in a linear conversation, very different to a browser where there is no conversation, it's just results.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? It means the business model of content advertising in a browser is going to die, for sure. The ownership of links that can be monetized will be useless unless you can put those links into an AI interface. And that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
So if I was to define the biggest opportunity in AI, it's to figure out link monetization that is part of a quality result set, not a detraction from it. It isn't advertising, but it is monetization.
Well, it's attention based. Google is an attention based business, and they are able to monetize the attention that we give it through the various platforms they own. They're able to monetize it through ads. Now, I think it's going forward. It's still going to has to be attention based, but I think you're right. How the monetization of the attention, I'm hoping it changes because, like you said, right now it's all ads and links and things. Now, I think the value of the AI part of all of this should be finding a better way to take the information and make it pleasing to and attractive to our attention without having to do certain things that the browser had to do before.
Yeah, which is really all just about relevance to the moment.
Yes.
You know, like Amazon has a product I want to buy that costs $100. Amazon's prepared to pay someone $10 for getting me to buy it. OpenAI currently isn't surfacing that link when I ask about the product because it isn't getting paid that $10. So there's a completely missing business model for AI that is probably the biggest business model imaginable, which is link monetization. But the links, unlike in the browser, shouldn't be spam. They should be pertinent to what it is you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, it's usually not. And right now, it's actually sponsors just saying, we'll give you whatever we need to be in that top search space. Right. So that has absolutely no relevancy to most people, but they'll skin off out of a million people who do that query, they'll skim off 1 or 2 points, and that'll drive their business.
Yeah,
That's not good for us, and it's leaving a huge 98% of the market out there that they aren't able to address.
Yeah, I mean, to be critical of Google, they've pulled a masterstroke. That Google owns 100% of the knowledge of links that carry money. They have them all. And they know how much money they carry second by second. But today, they curate the top third of the browser results to make sure that they're serving those results, not from pure search, and they're maximizing. Now, as we move to AI, with Gemini being a player, the world isn't going to trust Google with having a monopoly over knowledge of monetizable links. OpenAI won't trust Google. Anthropic won't trust Google. There needs to be a trusted third party that plays the Google role. Probably gets paid less than Google gets for playing that role, but serves the entire ecosystem with, here's the 3 links to that product. And if that link gets clicked on and the product gets bought, the AI gets paid a referral fee. If you buy a car or whatever, that's very different to a sponsored result.
Yes. Yeah.
The difference between that and a sponsored result is massive.
And a sponsored result, there's a certain amount of, for lack of a better way of putting it, pissing people off.
Yeah.
You'll get your 2%, and that might be enough to drive your business, but you're really making that other 98% mad, aggravated, frustrated, because we also then have to try to filter our way through the results, because just because it's at the top doesn't mean it's a great result. It just means that these guys have sponsored that to get that spot. So we have to do the extra work of figuring out where's the really good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And increasingly, AI is the place to go for qualitative knowledge about products. But weirdly enough, you don't get a link to buy it.
That's why I think Perplexity is saying, 34.5 billion to get that already in place, or we figured out on our own, and who knows how long it'll take to do that.
Yeah.
That's an interesting question. All right, last thing. Going right from our conversations from the Gillmor Gang. Where does Apple fit in all of this? Where is Apple currently standing when it comes to all things AI and being able to lead in this space, be a company that actually paves the direction and people follow? Where are they here?
Well, so the constant in the answer is, this is weird. I don't think I've ever said this out loud before. Apple has always outsourced content monetization. Apple is not a content monetization company and never has been. It has a small advertising business, but mostly it outsources it to Google through the Safari embedding of Google and the iOS embedding. So Apple's instinct is to outsource anything that isn't a core expertise. And clearly AI is not a core expertise at Apple. I mean, AI is actually, that's not fair. LLMs are not a core expertise at Apple. And so it's outsourcing it initially to ChatGPT or OpenAI. And I don't think there's any, other than the noise, there's no compelling reason for Apple to deviate from outsourcing things it doesn't consider a core competence. And so I think they'll keep outsourcing unless they can come up with something that's better. They could buy something. There's a lot of rumors around that, and I don't think they're crazy rumors. They could, if I was them, I probably would buy both Anthropic and Perplexity, because you get the best of both worlds. And they could afford it. But if they didn't buy anything, I still think they're in good shape, because they own iOS, which is dominant in many markets and certainly big in all markets. And that gives them they are the interface to content through iOS, and they can cut deals with everyone that they outsource to share most of the economic upside of that outsourcing. So that I don't think they're in as bad shape as people think, unless it's kind of, you think of it as a race where the winner has to be good at AI. I think the winner has to be good at attention.
I agree with that last statement. As you know, I'm not as high up on Apple having the internal expertise to become a leader in the AI space, not from an infrastructure. I'm talking about from a actual leading, thought leading, idea forming, execution on AI services. That's where I agree with you that they need to buy something, because they've had years. They had Siri in 2011.
Yeah.
I mean, that could have been the first step in really putting AI all over the place.
Yeah, but their instinct when they bought Siri was to cheat, basically canned answers to known questions.
All right. There was no intelligence. You're right.
There was no intelligence. There was routing. There was routing to the answer.
Yes, that's true. But even stating that, they seem to, I don't know if undervalue the power of this AI, where it could go. But for whatever reason, companies that weren't even a thought back then have kind of passed them in this little small area. Now, I agree with you. They could buy up a couple of these folks because they got the money. They print money every quarter. But they haven't shown the propensity to do that yet. And they let the guy that I think the guy that was behind the designing the latest iPhone, apparently he had some ideas he wanted to implement. And look what happened. He moved over to OpenAI AI. So they're going to come out with something. It's going to be interesting to see what their team does around this.
I will predict their team will not produce a foundation LLM. They will do implementations with specific outcomes in mind in apps and in the possibly in the OS as well. But I don't think they're building, another OpenAI. I really doubt that. Now, that said, whereas I don't think Apple has to be good at AI, I think Google does.
Yes.
Because Google has the market to lose. So having Android is an asset to Google. But an Android without Gemini would threaten search. And Google needs to control the transition from search to Gemini. Apple doesn't have anything like that. It really can just keep on keeping on with the iPhone. I've got the latest iOS developer version. It's great. It's got all kinds of little tweaks in that are good. And I'm not limited on AI. I can use any AI I want on it, and I'm quite happy. I'd be less happy if Apple replaced those with its own, and its own wasn't as good.
You know what, though? And I can't believe we talked for over an hour, because it's been fascinating. It doesn't even feel like it's been that long. But one thing, I kind of circling back to the way that these companies are being valued in terms of their stock prices. If you look at Apple's stock price, I don't think it's budged much over the year. And it might be a little down.
It just went up because they announced that they're going to use ChatGPT 5.
So once again, that's attributed to the partnership bringing that in versus having doing something internally that's coming from the inside. So I think right now Apple is kind of being treated like the enterprise front office sales, front office applications, because they're not being. I don't think people understand where Apple does fit in terms of as an AI leader, because it's not infrastructure. They don't have any AI infrastructure. So they're not getting the benefit of like a Oracle or a Microsoft or companies like that. They're kind of being treated like, which is weird because they are a device-driven company. But when it comes to AI, they're kind of being treated like they aren't a company that has that kind of infrastructure, at least hardware, because Oracle has that, and of course they do a lot of things. But 52% year to date, and Apple, who's kind of everybody looks at when it comes to devices of the mobile, the phone, the tablet, the watch. That's a huge opportunity. The healthcare data that comes off of that watch. It just feels like at least the investors feel like Apple is missing the boat. And I'm just curious to see, do you think at some point they will actually gain, at least in the marketplace, gain the stature of some of the, when it comes to AI, not generally speaking, when it comes to AI, do you see them gaining that stature and being seen as a leader at some point in the next year or two?
So I think one is, do I see it happening? Two is, would I recommend it?
Okay.
If I was Apple, I would stick to my guns and I would not acquire Perplexity or Anthropic or both. And I would make a very strong case that iOS is the best interface to AI on the planet without Apple having to do AI. And I would grow the business through growing consumer attention at the device level, which would include new devices as well. And that would be my core. What do I think they'll really do? I think Apple is starting to be influenced by the noise, which it usually isn't. I think Tim Cook is on the defensive. And I suspect they might make some acquisitions to make the noise go away. And if they do that, I think the stock will benefit in the short term, but it won't really change the quality of the experience for the user in the long term.
Yeah, interesting. We could go so many other directions, but we've run out of time. But Keith, thanks for doing this, making time to do this. Actually, I'd like to do this sometime in the future again, because so many interesting things are coming out, and it's good.
3 weeks from now, we'll be wrong about everything. We need to talk again.
Yeah, we'll have to walk back everything we say and then offer something different. It's
exactly.
But thanks again. And do you want to point people to anything that you want them to check out?
The SignalRank newsletter is pretty good. SignalRankUpdate.substack.com. I think it's a jumping off point for lots of other things, so it's got more content.
Awesome. And thanks, Mr. I call him the cowboy, Brian Summer. You wrote this long comment. We just weren't able to really dig into it, but thanks, sir. And Shashi, thanks for checking this out, Shashi. And I don't know Giovanni. I don't even know if I'm going to say his last name. Gagliardi.
Yeah.
But thank you for hanging in there with us. And I think that's
it's Italian, so it might be Gagliardi. You should tell us.
Yeah.
In comments.
And thanks again to everyone else that was hanging in there with us. By the way, before we get out of here, I want to just let people know that tomorrow is another CRM Players show, and it's kind of a special show. It's so special. I thought I had an image. Maybe I don't have an image. Maybe it's not that special after all, but it is, folks. We are doing a special CRM Players event. I think this is it. Here we go. Where we're bringing together a whole bunch of folks that we've known over the years that have worked at companies like some of the folks that we mentioned, Salesforce, Oracle, SAP, all these kind of companies that we've known throughout the years. But now they've recently, over the last month or two, all these folks that we're showing, Donnie Weinstein, Celia Fleischecker, Yoon Park, Shani Mita, and Alan Lepofsky, they've all recently moved to other companies and in some instances, different kinds of roles. So we're going to bring them all together because we've known them throughout the years. We're going to see what's driving the movement, what they're doing, how does AI impact all this stuff, because you always have to ask that. And we're doing that tomorrow at our usual CRM Players time, which is 3 p.m. Thursday. So we hope to see you then, and hope to see you next week. All right. Thanks again. And thanks to Keith. See you later.